It's now been 1 year since Bernie Sanders' mittens took over your social media feed, and more importantly, since the actual person of one Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was sworn in as the 46th President of the United States with Kamala Harris as his VP. How is he doing? Let's take a look, try to keep it fact-based, and take a quick spin around the pros and cons of what Biden has done in his first year in office, and by the end, you're going to have a chance to grade him, give him a letter grade. But let me give you some context on this first. I'm also going to reveal with you the results of a survey. I surveyed another part of the GRE audience to give Biden's first year a pass or fail grade. I'll reveal the results of that survey to you here near the end of the video because I don't want those results to temper what you think. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold. This is GRE. We are not turning this into a political commentary platform. This is a real estate investing platform. But politics do matter. For example, we cultivate a crowd of real estate investors here. Maybe you think the Biden administration let things like mortgage loan forbearance and eviction moratoriums linger on for too long. And sometimes you think, well, under him, those things ceased. Those things unwound. I think it's important to remember is how much is the president responsible for? How much occurred under him? How much influence could he have on those things? And then prior to his inauguration with the predecessor president, you need to understand how many of those effects linger and that he inherited himself. Hey, go ahead and put a like on this if you would. The fact that I'm even taking on something that people easily find pretty controversial and how I'm going to try to keep this fact-based. When we look at the economy, hey, Biden has overseen an historic recovery in the job market. In fact, when he came in office, the unemployment rate was 14.9%, and it is now down to 3.9%. That's huge. The problem is there is too much money chasing too few goods. Yeah, inflation hit its highest rate since 1982. Maybe you're thinking that's not so bad on its own until you understand that wages have not kept up proportionally to that stepped up rate of inflation. That's the problem. Yeah, median earnings for full-time workers grew 2.6 annually back in the fourth quarter, and consumer prices, on the other hand, have been increasing at about 7%. That's how hard of a time that wages are having keeping up. Now, oftentimes, inflation is good for the rich, and that disproportionately hurts the poor. Oil prices recently topped $90 for the first time since 2014, and that's despite attempts by the Biden administration to try to keep them down, and gasoline prices are at their highest in 7 years. Biden had the U.S. rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement to try to reassert some environmental leadership on those sorts of issues. But reaching his goal of cutting emissions in half by 2030 is going to be a huge challenge. Emissions climbed 6% last year as coal plants revved back to life. What about the pandemic? COVID continues to rage throughout Biden's first year in office and into his second year here, and more Americans died of COVID in 2021 than in 2020. That's despite the availability of vaccines, and getting a lot of Americans vaccinated has been a major challenge. Whether you agree with that or whether you don't, you've got to face up to the fact that about 64% of Americans are now vaccinated, and that lags substantially behind America's wealthy peers across the world. Biden withdrew all of the U.S. troops from Afghanistan, and he maintains a pretty adversarial relationship with both China and Russia, and he said that he expects Russia to invade Ukraine. Now, some things that really affect us. Biden signed a $1.9 trillion pandemic relief bill last spring and a $1.2 trillion federal infrastructure bill. Those things are giant. That represents the biggest federal investment in infrastructure, things like roads and trains and ports and broadband infrastructure. Infrastructure bills are generally those sorts of things throughout the decades and generations that have gotten bipartisan support, but that's pumped a lot of money into the economy. He also extended a federal moratorium on student loan payments through May 1st. And some of the other priorities have really run out of steam on Capitol Hill, where his party really has the slimmest of margins in the Senate. The Build Back Better Act would have poured tons of money into environmental and social and health programs, but that did not get enough support. Biden has been telling reporters that he thinks he can still get pretty big chunks of his plan signed into law. That remains to be seen. Now, he has really expanded the social programs, and a lot of people really don't like that. A lot of his commentary, it doesn't critique the other political party as much. He's not directly critical of them as much as some of his predecessors were, and some people like that Biden's language has been, I suppose, more unifying than it's been divisive. I like to stick to facts here. You know, Chris Martenson, who's been a two-time guest on the Get Rich Education podcast with me, he said something a while ago that really resonated with me. Don't go left and right when it comes to partisanship. Go up and down. Put partisanship aside. Up is acting with integrity. Either way, Biden's approval rating is in the dumps at 40%. And to compare that to President Obama, at the same point in his presidency, he had a 49% approval rating. Now, the Fed is positioned to raise interest rates next month and taper new asset purchases. So a lot of people think that this really is going to have the ability to tamp down on inflation. And if the pandemic can indeed continue to wane, a lot of people think that Biden is going to get a popularity boost. And that's pretty important here when we have a year of midterm elections coming up in November. All right, well, I told you I would let you know the results of a survey of another segment of our audience. That was on the Get Rich Education Instagram page, and there it was asked how Biden did in his first year, the Biden-Harris administration, and that was just given a pass or fail poll vote there. And among GRE followers there on that page, 91% said the Biden-Harris administration has failed, and only 9% gave it a passing grade. So what do you think? How would you rate the first year of this administration? And you can use either system, an A, B, C, D, or F. Use that system, or a pass-fail. And go ahead and give a reason in the comments below. And I'll try to respond to some of these if I can. I'd really like your comment to know where you stand on this. I'm Keith Weinhold. Thanks for being here, but you weren't here for me. You were here for you. We'll see you in the next video.